Nice.
All right. Incredibly pleased to be joined right now by a member of the Canadian national baseball team. He was drafted in 2008 by the Toronto Blue Jays and has played professional baseball for well over a decade. Michael Crouse, welcome to the Walk-Off, man. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on, boys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, buddy. How was your Christmas this very odd year?
It was good. I've been home for Christmas for like the last 3 years. I've been in Australia, so it was nice to enjoy some family time, catch up with some good food and drinks with my aunt, my uncle, a couple cousins, and then New Year's was pretty chill, dude.
Yeah, right. Wasn't it?
The city was shut down at 8 o'clock here, so I brought it in with the family back at home.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, buddy. I know there was no minor league ball this year, independent baseball, few and far between, and yet you found a way. You actually were playing with the Chicago Dogs of the 12-team Independent American Association Baseball League. You were one of very few players to even find a team. How did that come about, my man?
So I used to play with in the Blue Jays organization with the guy by the name of Casey Hobson. His dad is Butch Hobson, former Red Sox manager and player. And he's been coaching indie ball, I don't know, over the past decade. I played with him. I had a little stint with him in the Atlantic League in Lancaster. And then he moved on a couple years and got that job with Chicago Dogs. So I was originally, honestly, signed with them before the whole pandemic came about. So
You're kidding.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a luck of the draw. Because there was a lot of guys that were signed in the Atlantic League and other organizations.
Yeah.
And knowing that connection with Butch, they still couldn't get on the team because the roster was full. So I'm kind of fortunate in that aspect, to be honest. But it just goes to show you networking and people that you know throughout your career come back to kind of, help you along this path.
How did that season go for you? Obviously, independent ball doesn't have the resources the major leagues have. How was protocol? And did you find that trying to push yourself through such an odd circumstance that the clubhouse seemed a little tighter than normal?
Honestly, it wasn't too bad. We didn't have a bubble per se. Our bubble was the city being shut down. Our bubble was being at the field with each other from 2 to 10. Restaurants was kind of a hassle, so we would always just order Uber Eats to the field and eat.
Right.
We had a COVID test once or twice a week, all dependent. It wasn't the one where it was way up the nostril. It was basically a spit in the tube. There was a couple host cities. So Winnipeg, for instance, was in the league. So they were out of Fargo's club, which is out of North Dakota. So they kind of split that stadium. The unfortunate part about Winnipeg is they're so good in the league with their fans and bringing in a lot of people that they didn't get any fans with North Dakota. I guess North Dakota are really for their own team. So whenever they played a home game in North Dakota, they wouldn't even show up. In terms of like the travel and whatnot, it was super easy because all the teams were in the same area. They did that for a reason. Get your own room at home, and some guys got their own room on the road. So they kind of made it to where it was you were with each other a little bit less off the field, and then when you're in the clubhouse, it is what it is, right?
Right. So you're a BC boy, Canadian kid.
Yeah.
Did you grow up cheering for the Blue Jays, or were you a Mariners fan because of the proximity, or who was your team?
I mean, Sportsnet plays most of their games in Toronto, Seattle, a little bit of New York. I love Seattle because of Ken Griffey. I love Toronto because I'm a Canadian guy. And I love the Yankees because of the All-Stars they produced every season. So I was a combination of both. I wouldn't necessarily say that Toronto trumped those other two. But being drafted with Toronto definitely solidified my favorite team at that point.
Yeah, of course. Take us back to 2008. Tell me about the day you were drafted, man. How did that play out?
So the first day, I knew I wasn't gonna go like the first day is the first 5 rounds or the first 2 rounds or something like that.
Yeah.
I was at school, and the second day I took off, and I got the word. I was just watching the computer, and then right before I got drafted, I got a call from the scout that was always in Vancouver at the time and said, "Hey man, like we're about to select you this round." And I was ecstatic, man. just putting in all that work throughout your adolescence, running track, playing basketball, and then to finally call yourself a pro was was pretty special.
Oh, I can imagine, buddy. So you're 18, you're right out of high school. You've been drafted by a team that you're a fan of. So for our listeners, explain the choice that was kind of in front of you at that time, right? Because you had to decide between going to college and maybe re-entering the draft or signing with the Jays as, let's say, a little bit lower ranked prospect in the system. Was that a tough decision for you at the time, or were you like, screw it, I'm going pro?
I mean, it's always a life changing experience. 17 because I have that late
17.
birthday in November. Uh, I checked out a couple colleges down in Vegas, and I was either gonna go the JUCO route, the College of Southern Nevada, most likely, the same college that Bryce Harper went to.
Yeah.
And I was gonna go that route just so I could stay eligible every single year instead of locking myself in for 3 years. But I just felt like at that particular time with where I got drafted, and the experience that Team Canada allowed us to have going down to Florida, going down to Dominican, constantly playing pros throughout the year, really just solidified and made me realize, okay, I can't handle this venture, this next step right now. And we talked with the family, and I signed the paper, and I was down in Florida a week and a half later. It's crazy, man.
It was just that quick, eh?
Oh man, you're a kid that has a routine of going to high school, um, going playing with their friends, playing basketball at open gyms, bringing $2.50, kind of asking your parents for that money at the time. To all of a sudden doing you're signing on a dotted line, you have a little bit of money now, and now you're dealing with men, guys that have graduated college, 22, 23-year-olds who've had 5 more years of life experience on you. I don't even know how to go to a restaurant by myself. I don't know how to go to movies by myself, let alone how do I get to the field? I don't have a car down there. So it was cool.
That is cool. What was the process as to how they like? Was it a phone call and they're like, get down to Florida for the Gulf Coast League, or did they fly you to Toronto for a meeting, or how did your development start out?
Yeah. So basically, when you get drafted, you obviously you sign on the dotted line. You go down there. Once you arrive, they put you up in the team hotel, and the team hotel is paid for maybe 4 days. And then after that, you got to figure it out, right? So you do all your physicals, and then you're just trying to talk to guys in the clubhouse. Hey, man, because at that time they didn't put us up at the hotel. Now they do to make it easier for guys. At that time, it was like, okay, you have 4 days, and you guys need to figure this out. So I was talking to guys, trying to figure out, hey, man, where you living? But a lot of
So
these
you're
guys,
literally like, hey, you got a spare room?
you got a spare room? Or like, what do we do? Like, what is a deposit? Like, what, like, what is, what is electricity? I thought it just comes with the rent, like, and I'm like, damn, high school, couldn't you teach me these type of things? Taxes, all these things. I'm like just thrown into it. But yeah, so I ended up figuring it out with these 3 other guys, and we couldn't find an apartment. So we talked to the hotel manager, and we said, hey, like, can you just help us out for these 2 months? Because the Gulf Coast League was going to start in a week and a half, and we had about 2.5 months down in Florida of just grinding, like getting to the field at 6:15 a.m., hitting, working out, stretch at 9, come back in, eat lunch at 12, play a game at 1, repeat for 2.5 months. You only get Sundays off.
Was it a little overwhelming at first when you got there? Did you feel, I mean, at 17, were you worried? Did it ever cross your mind like, maybe I shouldn't be here?
I think I think there's always that thought that comes into your brain at some point. From a physical standpoint and a mental standpoint, yes, of course, I could be there. That was one of the decisions on why I signed. But I just feel like playing in BC, and you just realize, okay, you're just a little tick behind these American boys that grew up in Texas and Cali and Florida. You start to see that they all know each other. I'm like, oh my God, you guys have been playing on the same scout teams, and all the All Americans and all that type of stuff. So in that sense, it was like, damn, okay, like we're gonna have to put in that extra work just to get to kind of like where they're at. And it happens quick if you put in the work, but um yeah, going back to the hotel and moving in, we ended up getting 4 guys, or so 3 other guys, so 4 total, and a 2 bed or a 3 bed, 1 bath hotel room. We alternate sleeping on the ground, a little air mattress. And yeah, we were in that thing for about 2.5 months, man. Crazy.
So you boys became close, obviously.
Oh, we were close. Yeah, we were close. And we still talk about it to this day. It's hilarious.
Oh, that's incredible, man. So you spent 6+ years in the Blue Jays minor league system. And it's funny because you often hear about the grind that is minor league baseball, between the bus rides and the hotels and the questionable pay. Now, obviously, you're doing it for the love of baseball, but did it wear on you at any time? Like, did it feel like a meat grinder at points?
Yeah, I mean, you can get to a point in spring training where it's tedious and Groundhog Day, and you're just waiting to break. I spent, what was it, 2.5 seasons in the GCL and 2 seasons in extended. And for those that don't know what that is, basically it's spring training for 3 months straight. It's wake up early in the morning at 6:30. It's get to the field, have a bite to eat, hit, stretch, do all your fundamentals. And I'm talking like the basics, like your drop steps, your base running. And it's good because it's ingrained in your head. Like I can go out and teach a full practice tomorrow just because it's ingrained in me. Whereas a normal season, you're waking up at 10:30, you're grabbing breakfast, you're headed to the field at 2. You're playing a game at 7 in front of fans. I didn't have fans for the first 3.5 years of my career, or the first 3 years of my career. So when I finally got to low A, I was like, okay, this is easy now. You talking about I get to sleep until 10? I get to go out and take the line at 6:30, and I got fans cheering at me. I got to sign some autographs. I'm like, okay, now I'm a pro.
I'm very curious about the way the pay works. Is there bumps up every time, like when you go from low A to high A, or high A to triple, or double A, I should say? Like, are there incremental increases? Because I know when you're first starting, it's pretty thin, right?
I don't know how guys do it without a signing bonus, to be honest.
Right.
It was about, I think in the GCL at that time, it was about $1,200 a month.
Yeah.
And you got to think about that college guy who's got bills and whatnot, who only signed for 10,000 or whatever it might be, or $1,000.
You ripped through that pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah, super quick, right? And so when you get to the next level, you're talking about $100 increase.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not a drastic, okay, you're making $4,000 now. No, it's
not
like
changing your life. Yeah. No. Okay.
Like you're making $1,367 now. Like, congratulations on your upgrade. And then AAA, I think, is the biggest bump. You can get up to like 21, 22. But most of those guys in AAA are on the 40-man. So they're making close to 100,000 if you're on the 40-man. A lot of guys have been up to the big leagues and come back down. So they're making at least half of that salary that they would have made in the big leagues, maybe a little less. So yeah, if you're not on the 40-man, or if you haven't had a cup of coffee, then it's tough. And I think a lot of people, they say, oh, this guy's been in AAA for 9 years. He's only been up to the big leagues one time for like 24 hours. I'm like, he's making money. He has, as soon as you get that cup of coffee, you start to make money in this game. And you can play in AAA and make an amazing career. And those guys usually making anywhere from like 10 to 15,000 a month, right? If you have that cup of coffee. Yeah.
Okay.
So don't feel bad for the guy with the cup of coffee. Feel bad with the guy with the cup of water, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. So the guys that are just, say, a walk-on in A-ball, like, they're just scrounging by, I'm guessing, eh?
Scrounging. Yes.
Did you have teammates that had to work jobs while they were doing it?
I had guys that would show up and they would work a 9 to 5 in the off season. And
Wow.
I'm like, how do you even put in time for yourself to work, right? And they just figure it out. They either get.
They're like, we don't.
Yeah, it's like we really don't, but we say we will.
Yeah. So, Michael, I'm curious because you did play for almost every Blue Jays affiliate. I mean, the Lansing Lugnuts are no longer with them, but you played there for a year. You were with Bluefield and Dunedin and New Hampshire. Money aside, was there one that you enjoyed playing at more?
Yeah, I love, and I think this league is a high A league now, the Midwest League,
Right.
with the Lansing Lugnuts. I think it was the first true experience of me playing in a stadium with fans. Our opening day that one year was it was in 2011. It was so we're right on the campus of Michigan State University, and we opened up on Thursday, which is Thirsty Thursday for all the college students, and they're just coming back to school, and or they're just they're just leaving school. It's Thirsty Thursday, and there was about 10,000 people.
Wow.
Crazy college kids drinking and fans just cheering. And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. So that whole league, that whole Midwest League, they're just filled with amazing like colleges throughout. And you get some amazing people coming to games. You get a good fan base coming to games. All the fields are taken care of except for maybe Beloit and Clinton, Iowa. Terrible. But other than that, I thoroughly had a good time between the stadium, the amenities that we had to use, our cages, the field, and just the fan base all throughout.
I heard Lansing has a good fan base, so they were coming out in droves, eh?
Oh yes. They, I mean, we had a consistent fans throughout the entire year. It didn't matter what day it was on.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are piles of them, but was there any one experience or story that kind of stood out in your mind during your time with the Blue Jays organization?
Honestly, those days of us grinding in the extended and the GCL, but like finding some sort of like peace with it was super nice. And those relationships that we created amongst each other in that atmosphere, like I still talk to those guys today, and we still reminisce on those today, because you're really seeing people fail, how they deal with failure, and then you're seeing them succeed. And like, okay, are they starting to become a different person, or are they staying humble, or staying that same person for when they were drafted? And then you start seeing the high draft picks that are struggling for the first time in their life, and you get to start seeing that humble process through them. So those early stages, granted, there's amazing stories throughout like every part of my career, but those stages like really set a foundation in what you have to do to stay focused mentally. Physically is easy. I mean, you get that injury, that sucks, you rehab it, whatever, but can you wake up after being 0 for 8 in the GCL with like 5 punchies and try to get better and do it again and compete and know that, okay, you're not that type of hitter, you're a better hitter than that, but like you got to trick your mind that you are, like those were the life lessons that I learned in those 2.5, 3 years.
There must feel like there's a camaraderie that is over and above when you're just starting out and coming up and dealing with all those obstacles with the guys you did in the GCL, right?
Yes. No, absolutely. You're climbing mountains with each other.
Yeah.
Like you're going out grabbing dinner with your $13 per diem, splitting wings because you can't get your own wings because wings are going to cost your whole per diem. So you got to get a burger. You got to get a burger, and then you got to splurge and go $3 over your per diem and split it. Like those type of little things that you got to go to Target because they have a 90-day return policy on a TV, and you got to get the 65-inch and you got to put it in your hotel room and return it on the 89th day. You know what I mean? Like you're doing those type of things just to get by. And by doing that, you're creating so many memories because you guys are on that same hustle.
I really relate to that. It's funny because I'm a professional comedian, or I was back when you could still tour. But
Yeah.
the guys you come up with, it's funny the love and the camaraderie you build at that beginning stage. And you all grow and you grow apart and you're all doing your own thing, but it's just like in comparison to even, and I'm not saying that there isn't camaraderie on the teams you play on now, obviously, right? But there's
Yeah.
something about starting out with guys and dealing with that struggle. And like you said, the splitting wings, it almost, as you build your mental toughness towards it, like there's just yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I get where you're coming from. That's very cool. That, like, do you still talk to these guys that you kind of came up with?
Yeah. We still talk, and honestly, a lot of us will still kind of play against each other and in winter ball and whatnot. And um, to going back to just embracing the beginning, I think our my low A coach in 2011 said it best. His name is Mike Redman. He was a 13-year big leaguer, and he just had retired, and he started coaching us. And he made it up with the Marlins a little bit, coaching too. But he said, enjoy this year, guys, while you're young, in low A, because as you start to get older, start to get to high A, especially double A and triple A, guys have families, man. Guys have families. Um, Guys have different business opportunities that they've acquired because of that career they've chose. And they have their own kind of different life now. The body gets a little bit older, so they're not able to just do things that they were allowed to do when they were younger. Whereas when you're 20, everyone can go to Buffalo Wild Wings and grab burgers and have fun or do whatever. Stay up a little bit later on the bus. And whereas when you get a little bit older, those guys are going back home, talking to their wife, talking to their kids. Like, they have real stuff to do.
Yeah.
Those beginning stages of learning or spreading your wings and learn how to fly, it's amazing because you get to do it together. Whereas when you get to that double A, triple A, you have 2-3 guys in that circle, maybe 4 guys in that circle. And that's, you just got to figure out your own routine at that point.
So in 2018, you joined the Mexican Baseball League. And I'm incredibly curious to hear about your experiences there, because as a ball player, I'm sure there was a lot of familiarity, right? But then on the other side, just on the personal side, you must have just felt like a fish out of water in so many cases.
So yes and no. At that point in my career, it's been a decade, right? So I've been dealing with Latin. I've been dealing with Latin Americans for a while. I had a stint in Venezuela for a month, and I also had a stint in Nicaragua for a month in winter ball.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that being said, and then also dating back to my my junior national days, we go down to Dominican for 10 days. So living as a local in a Latin country wasn't necessarily a new experience for me. The new experience was, I guess doing a spring training down in Mexico and doing that, because I've always just shown up to Latin America and then we're right into the season. So doing a spring training, staying in a hotel, and then trying to figure out a city that way was a brand new experience. But I've always loved the Latin culture, and I always have so much fun down there, just because the music, the fans, the whistles, the bells, the drums, the everyone's talking loud, everyone's voicing their opinion. Like, it was of course a new experience within that week, but I knew kind of what I was getting myself into. It wasn't an unknown, I guess you could say.
How are the fans down there?
Amazing. Just crazy. Especially you get them on that weekend, that Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The alcohol is so cheap there, right? So like everyone is just drinking their micheladas, their beers, eating good, being loud, and so doing whistles the whole game. They don't really take a pitch off. Whereas like you get fans in the States or Canada, they're talking amongst their families. No, these fans are talking amongst their families and yelling and screaming and hollering. So it makes for like an entertaining time in the outfield, which I need.
Tell me a little bit about winter ball. Like, tell me about your first experience that you went down. Was it Venezuela the first experience in Latin America and South America,
Um,
or did you go to Nicaragua first?
it was, what was it? It was 2017. It was Venezuela. Yeah, it was Venezuela, which was which was crazy because of the economy at the time, right?
Yeah.
We really weren't dealing with money. We had to get a debit card because the equivalent of $8,000 in cash at that time was worth $1. Yeah, so we couldn't carry around any cash. Like guys in the previous years would have to have a backpack full of cash and be filled up with like almost like $1 million, or not $1 million. They're almost like $100,000 at any particular time. But that $100,000 was only worth like at that time maybe like $100, you know? Yeah, it was super crazy. So we had this debit card. We stayed in this resort. I just remember one time I didn't get to the restaurant in time for dinner. So I had to ask one of my Venezuelan guys, like, hey, man, we need to leave the resort and go get some food. And you can just tell that people are surviving out there. I'm not saying all Venezuela is like this at this particular time, but in the certain areas, people are just surviving. So everyone was trying to size you up, see who you are. They realize that you're not from here. You just can't skate by when countries are going through a crisis like that, because people know exactly your routine or where you go shop or where you go eat. So that was definitely a crazy experience for me because I was stuck in the hotel. I couldn't just freely roam to explore the city like a
Right.
local and find restaurant spots and find my own little niche.
Did you find the baseball there was as solid as you would in North America, or were there like what was kind of the baseball like on that side of things?
So Venezuela, Dominican, winter ball is crazy. You're getting a lot of pros come down there, and you're getting a lot of guys that are comfortable in that atmosphere. So now those Latins that aren't so comfortable in your country in America are now so comfortable in their home.
So you're almost seeing another side of guys you already know.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, why don't you play like this all the time? Like, like, what are you doing? I'm like, if you play like this all the time, you're unreal. So it's crazy that comfortability, and then it just opens your eyes. You're like, oh my goodness, this is what they're dealing with, right? They're in a foreign land. They don't know where to go. They don't have a car. They don't have their friends. They don't have their native tongue getting spoken every single time. They don't have that culture behind them. But when they get back home, they have all of that, so they feel comfortable and they ball out. So you're getting guys that are in like low A, high A, just amping up 2 extra miles per hour through, and then hitting the ball a little bit further and just totally buying into those teams down there. It's really cool to see.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
I'd never even thought of like what the comfortability means to
Hmm.
your performance, you know? I'm curious then. I mean, the Mexican league is a AAA league or the equivalent, right? And
Yeah.
and unlike the two AAA circuits in the US, the teams in Mexico don't have a major league affiliate. And I'm really interested in what you felt the positives of that were and some of the negatives that you ran across with no major league affiliate attached to the team you're playing on.
The positives are you are in the top league of that country at that time. So everyone views you as like that's your big leagues. And everyone that comes to the games are like, this is the big leagues, right? So you get treated like one. Um, the state, a lot of the stadiums now are turning into high quality stadiums, as you saw with some of the MLB teams that came down and actually played in Monterrey, and Mexico City now just has a $70 million new stadium, and Guadalajara is about to join the league.
Yeah.
They just had a new stadium built for the Pan American Games. But yeah, you're a big leaguer. The cons to Mexico would be, I think, the scouting. A lot of scouts are going to go more on hearsay and looking at numbers. There's not a lot that come down too much. But that's I think that's a little bit normal in today's era anyway. They're more looking for those analytical type numbers. and they're not able to just pop in because he lives 20 minutes away in Texas or Jersey. So that would be a little bit of the downfall. But with Mexico, a lot of guys get opportunities for winter ball, going to Dominican, Venezuela, and
where there is more scouting presence.
Yeah, where there is more scouting. So if you for instance, you take a look at what's happening in Dominican right now with their winter ball, you got Fernando Tatis playing winter ball, Robinson Cano playing winter ball, like my guys,
Vladdy Jr. Yeah,
Vladdy Jr. Like all these guys are playing winter ball. I think because of possibly the World Baseball Classic 2021 and the Olympic qualifiers coming up, they want to stay sharp and make that jump to the Olympics. But you get guys down there like that, so it allows the scouts to justify that particular league and the numbers.
Is the Olympics something you have your eyes on?
Yeah, so I was actually on the qualifying team to go down in March before we got canceled.
Right.
I was
the apocalypse, yes.
Yeah. Before everything just kind of shut down. So every year is so different with our Canadian guys, with injuries and what people are doing. So I would love to. There's only 2 more spots open. Dominican's not in yet. USA's not in it yet. Canada's not in yet. So we'll see. I mean, to be able to get to the Olympics is pretty special. They're not going to have baseball next Olympics in 2024. So it's either this year or 2028. That's it. You know what I
mean? Yeah, man. I kind of want to talk stolen bases with you. For me, since I was a little kid, the stolen base has been like just this magical thing in baseball. Just watching a guy take 90 feet when the opposition's like absolutely not, right? Like I remember being 10 when Ricky Henderson came to the Blue Jays and just being blown away by this guy's acumen to be able to read a pitcher and take the base. And this is something that, when it comes to your skill set, has been one of the major tools in your toolbox since you've been 17, right? Like speed has been a thing that has kind of propelled you forward. When you're on first base, how does your brain work? Can you break down base stealing science? Like, what are you looking for in the pitcher? Have you always had the green light to go? What's going through your head?
Yeah, I've always had the green light to go. Any good manager with someone that has some speed should always allow that runner to explore that speed. And also with people with good instincts, like base running and stealing isn't just about stealing off the pitcher and the catcher per se. You might be able to pick up little signs that allow you to get a better jump on certain pitches. You start noticing it right in the dugout. So as soon as a guy gets on first base, I'm really looking for some sort of tip. That tip might be the pitcher going back with his shoulder, or he leans with his head, or he has that one breath before he delivers the ball. And if that's not a thing, then I look at the feet and I see his pickoff move. If his pickoff move is super quick, then I take a little bit less of a lead and so forth. But then if I do get on first base, I'll take my lead and I'll peek into the catcher's signs. So normally the good catchers are taught to, hide your signs, put your signs deep in, but some get lazy and you can see that curveball sign and you kind of take off. And then as you become a solidified base stealer in the league, like you have to get a little bit more creative because they know that, okay, you're going to go. So you have to really pay attention to the patterns of when these teams like to do pitch outs. You also have to kind of play around with him at first base. Maybe I'll take a smaller lead to show, okay, don't worry about him. He's not going right here, but then I'll get a better jump. Little stuff like that has helped me along the way. But that being said, you have to work on it in the off season. I think it's an art that a lot of people don't do. They just depend, okay, I've been fast my whole career. And then no, this next season you've lost a step. And that's all it takes to not become a base stealer anymore. So I really do work on it, running track and my sprints and my first step quickness.
I like how you put that, the art of base stealing, because it is. And it's kind of an art that you have seen in the last decade of the game almost be diminished, right? Like teams are putting less emphasis on trying to take that 90 feet out of fear of an out, right?
Right.
Is that something that has frustrated you as a guy who has good skill at stealing a base?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it used to be you steal that base, and it's like, oh my god, you just changed the game, the whole inning. Whereas now it's not even like that. But I understand. I understand. The game has changed. The baseballs have changed. Baseballs are traveling about 15 feet further.
Yeah.
I can give you, I can give you an example. So it's still going to be a thing in minor league baseball just because of the baseballs. They don't travel that extra 20 feet. So you can take those extra bases and change a game that way. And you do also want to be a threat because it changes the mindset of the pitcher in terms of having to locate that pitch and not bouncing that ball because they know that guy on first base can take second base. So therefore, now you just gave your hitter that much better of a chance to get another fastball. And that's all we're trying to look for. So that's still the art of being a threat on the bases today. You might not be taking the base, but at least he's in your mind. But to go back with, sometimes I don't like to steal. For instance, there's this ballpark in Brisbane, Australia that we play in for winter ball. And it's super small to right field. I'm talking maybe 250 feet.
And wow.
And then 270 to center. So you got to think about it as a base stealer. Okay, yes, I can steal this base, but what, like, it's a lose-lose, I feel like. If I get thrown out, even if I get thrown out one time, that's possibly 2 runs off the board.
Right.
So when you play in places like that, or you're hitting in front of a Miguel Cabrera or a Barry Bonds or a Fernando Tatis, you're not stealing because you're already in scoring position.
Yeah.
So there is a sense of IQ that comes with it once you get to that certain level and you're dealing with hitters, guys that are hitting 30 home runs a year, guys that are hitting 300. You cannot afford to get out in front of those guys because they can hit a double in the gap, and with my speed, I score. Home run, there's 2 runs on the board. If I get thrown out, that might be an inning killer right there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I guess if you've got the speed that you have, a double in the gap is going to score you from first anyways.
Score it standing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any big stolen bases that stand out in your mind, game-changing stolen bases that you have pulled off in your career?
I think those stolen bases that you either do early in the game where you shouldn't have scored any runs that inning, but you drew that walk and you stole second and you stole third the next pitch. The next thing you know, there's a run on the board. Those are really frustrating to an opposing manager.
Oh, of course.
You know what I mean? But I think those stolen bases late in the game, man, those are fun. With a closer on the mound and you're on first base and there's 1 out and it's like, okay, the bunt's over. It's like, we have to put ourselves in some sort of scoring position right here for a single to score me. Because the closer, man, he's got the best stuff on the squad in terms of break and possibly velocity and spin rates and all that. So you really have to manufacture those runs still off those pitchers and late in the games. So I would say there's been a few in my career where we've been in the 9th inning, extra innings, and I've stolen second base. Guy moves me over and I score, and it's a special way to win a game.
Right, that's very cool. I am actually interested in, then, for you, what's more fun? And let's take all the strategy and analytics out, who's hitting behind you, all of that out. All right, just on what you enjoy most. Hitting a double into the gap and legging it into a triple, or hitting a single and then successfully stealing second and third?
Man, that double into the gap.
Yeah?
That
just
double
really hitting that next gear, getting to third.
Oh, man. And number one, when you hit that double in the gap, as soon as you hit it, it's like that flush feel, that swing that you're trying to get right since 2:30 in the afternoon, right? And then you just see there's no defenders around, and you're like, okay. And then that mindset comes in, that track speed comes in. It's like, okay, let's get that extra gear. And then you hit second base and you're just fighting for it. You slide in there and you're safe. And you give a little hoorah to the dugout. And it's that's as much as I love getting on first, stealing second and third. A triple is fun play, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that it's rare too that you can kind of get a opportunity to hit that top speed, right? Like,
well, if you look at it, the triple is way more rare than a stolen base.
Yeah, no, you're right, man.
Well, at least for my career. I'll get maybe 20, 30, 35 stolen bases a year and only like 7 triples, right? So you get a triple, I'm going to take that every day of the week.
This is awesome. I know so Tyson Gillies, your good buddy, he even mentioned to us, he's like, because we were talking stolen bases with him a bit, and he's like, oh, the guy you got to talk to is Michael. Like the way his brain works when he's on the base path, he's like, it's a beautiful thing. So I appreciate you taking the time to run down that with us.
No, absolutely.
So let's talk Tyson for a second here, because he's your good friend. He's your business partner with Travail, the hat. Yeah, love it. And we'll get into that in a second here. He was very gracious to kind of push you to come on the podcast, which is wonderful. So I'm curious. I know you both have been mainstays on the national team. Is that where you two met?
No, it actually started before that. We actually never played on Team Canada together until this past
recently,
trip.
Right?
Yeah, to Lima, Peru. He was a Langley Blaze guy, and I was a North Shore Twins guy. He was 2006, I was 2008. So like we never even really played against each other. We passed here and there for fall ball, but we had known about the Team Canada guys, right, in your region. So you always hear Tyson Gillies, Adam Lowen, Sean Bowman,
right?
Those type of guys. But yeah, his
the
age
BC boys, yeah.
Right, exactly. We didn't really truly connect until we were down in the off season a couple times. But when we were down, when he got traded to the Phillies, and we would both be down there before spring training, and you can kind of get a sense of all the minor leaguers and big leaguers that are down there. So that's kind of when we first like started to hang out, and then just talk shop about BC and the PBL.
Have you noticed that, and I know that when it comes to Canadian comedy, if you get to the point where you're making a living at it and you're professional and you're touring, you pretty much know all the other Canadian comics, or at least if you haven't met them, you've heard of them. Right. Is the Canadian baseball community very similar? Like, do you pretty much, once you kind of hit that certain level in baseball in Canada, do you kind of know the network?
Oh, 1,000%. I know everybody. Yeah. I mean, each trip you might run into some new guys that are coming through that were on the junior national team that are now making the senior team. And it's, and you're like, oh, hey man, how you doing? Michael Crouse. But like, they know of you, right? They've known that you've been in that system longer than you. And there's a respect factor for our junior national team. And I think that allows everybody to, kind of keep that network going. Ego's thrown out the door with Team Canada players. So it's like it's a truly respect thing. If I was to see a 16-year-old kid that was on your junior national team, I would treat him like my equal, which is what you should do in baseball and in life in general. But it's easier said than done in this game. So with Team Canada, what they've done there with the culture and keeping that consistent to make everyone feel welcomed, it's free and it's nice. And it creates that sense of family even when you're not on the team for the upcoming years.
I really love how you just put that you treat him like you're equal. Yeah. But you kind of alluded to this, that baseball is, I mean, there's a hierarchy, right? I mean, there's low A and then there's high A. And have you in your career run across guys that you were just like, well, that's exactly why I'm going to treat people like an equal, because that guy's a piece of shit?
Oh, dude, all the time. It's it's crazy, man. Like, it's just people feel entitled because they've, been to the big leagues for 2 years, or they have this amount of money in their bank account saved up, or they've done this. And I'm like, dude, come on.
Yeah.
We're on the same squad right now. Like, let's call a spade a spade. Like, what's going on? So it's like, and then you run into those big leaguers. A prime example would be Delman Young. Delman Young, first time I met him, just watching how he deals with the minor league guys, being a guy that was drafted first overall and having a successful career in the big leagues and still playing today, he just treats everybody like an equal, or he at least gives you the chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is all you can ask for. And there was a guy in the clubhouse that taught him or picked up some bills from him. And he said, when you get the opportunity to do this for other guys, remember, to keep this going. And that's kind of been his motto ever since. And you can really tell with certain guys.
Have you found throughout your career that the clubhouses that are the closest, the teams that you have gelled with the best, it is because everyone sort of has that mentality of we're all equal type of thing?
Have
there been guys that are, a little bit brash and that has worked too?
Yeah, they both can work, but I've been on the one where everyone's kind of doing their own thing, and you got too many egos, and it's hard to show up to the clubhouse every day. So instead of showing up at 2, you show up at 2:45 and so on. And next thing you know, you got about 3, 4, 5 guys showing up 10 minutes before stretch. And that's what happens. That's the nature of those clubhouses. And that's where the manager is so important, to understand that feel and to walk through the clubhouse or have those simple 30-second conversations to get an idea. The best clubhouses where there's no ego and that's all that's put to a side. Of course, there's going to be characters, and that's what you want. You want your egos to be in that character and that personality, not the I'm better than you, man. Like, go pick up those balls, bro. No. So when you have clubhouses like that, everyone shows up a little bit earlier, and like you start connecting a little earlier. You get on that same wavelength, and that energy is there. And I feed off energy. If the energy is off, man, it just eats you up inside. You get that clubhouse with good energy and everyone's on the same page, and the manager's behind the philosophy, the owner as well. It makes for an amazing season, a fun season. Yeah.
Have you found that playing independent ball, the egos are a little bit more in check, or is it just a obstacle that you kind of have dealt with? It doesn't really matter the league.
No, they're more in check. They're more in check because everyone's at the same level, right? Everyone's been humbled at some point. This is more in that player that's never really has gone through the ranks, low A, high A, triple A, big leagues. Right. Those are usually going to be the guys that have that sense of ego. When the young guy gets drafted in the second round and signs for $700,000, those are the guys that are going to have the ego. But then as you go through this game, like, oh man, what's going on? You're 2 for 24. What happened to your ego now? You know what I mean? So the game will put you in check and humble you in that sense. So it's cool to see. And as you get older too, it also does the same thing, whether you're in high A, double A, triple A, because now you've gone through those seasons, 500 ABs where you hit 330 in high school, but you're really a 260, 270 hitter, and that's okay. But you don't get to just walk around like you're a 350 hitter. Like, relax.
I like that, man. Baseball's like life. You give it enough time, it'll humble you. Absolutely. So we touched on it a few minutes ago, but you and Tyson have started a new endeavor, Travail, and you've both always been big on fitness and training and the mental side of sports. And I mean, you both have a combined couple decades of professional baseball between you. Tell me how you kind of put this all together with Tyson to create Travail and where you kind of hope for it to go in the future.
Well, we would always give lessons out of this facility out in North Shore. So one year we came home and the people that were running the place wouldn't allow us to to give lessons anymore. And I was like, what's going on? We're the only professionals that would like to teach in the North Shore. I've been in this facility for the last 7 years, kind of, helping grow relationships and people in there. And they're like, oh, you're gone and winter ball and yada, yada, yada. I'm like, pros in town, you use them. So it was whatever. My buddy was working at Twist Conditioning at the time, and they just had moved spots to this spot in East Vancouver, and they were renovating it. And there was this one area that was kind of vacant. I'm like, what are you doing in this area? It's like I don't know, it's 100 by 40 with 22-foot ceilings. I'm like, what are you doing with this spot? Like, we're going to put cages in here. I'm like, okay, who's going to be your baseball guy? And they're like, nobody. I'm like, I'll be your baseball guy. Because we didn't have any, we come back, we give lessons, make some money so we can train, go back to Florida, spring training, instead of getting that 9 to 5 that we were talking about earlier. So yeah, I hit up Tyson and I'm like, hey man, I think we might have a little opportunity here to teach. So we talked to the owner. He's like, how much do you want to be paid an hour? And I'm like, X amount of dollars. And we keep talking. He's like, what do you guys call your company? And I'm just looking at Tyson. I'm like, company? So we step out and we're walking back to our cars. We're walking back to our cars. We're like, bro, let's just create a business, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. So I hit up my buddy who does branding and designs and whatnot. And we literally sat down with him like a week and a half later. And he told us what the bill was going to be for this thing. I'm like, Jesus, dude, like, this is what you guys charge, you creative heads? I'm like, oh. I'm like, and we just sit down, you make a brand off the computer and we go from there. And I'm like, I didn't realize it was just, that the process behind it. So we did that. We bought all the gear and we installed the cage. And then we just started bouncing around to little leagues and talking to presidents and trying to set something up for that next fall. And now we're going into our second year with over 100 kids coming to the facility.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah, we do groups of anywhere from usually 6 to 8 with 2 coaches on, and we just run them through like a 75 minutes overall skills, kind of basing things on functional movements and those everyday skills that you got that us ball players need in order to be consistent, man. So it's been great. We got some.
Do you enjoy coaching? Do you like sharing the knowledge like that?
I do. I think once you figure out how to translate it into words, because sometime when I first started, I was trying to figure out, oh my God, wait,
how do I communicate this knowledge? Yeah.
So once you get over that aspect, and then you start to see a kid figure it out, and you're like, oh my goodness, like I want to tell him, like, hey man, like I didn't learn this until like I was 17, so you're welcome, you 12-year-old, you know what I mean? Like so it's amazing because now they get to go out and play with their friends, and they get to rep these out the proper way. So we're talking about efficiency getting increased at the age of 10, and that's what we need to do to keep up with the States. Those guys down there, they're getting pro coaches teach them all year round. All year pros are teaching them. And not to take anything away from like the dads that are putting in volunteer hours, it's great, but there's that certain intricate skill set that needs to be installed at a certain age. And I feel like we can give that back to the kids, but not only the coaches too. Like we have some of the coaches that are high up stay in and just take notes so they can relay it to the kids and keep that philosophy and those drills consistent throughout the year.
I can imagine that when it comes to player development, that's a massive thing, right? Like being able to set them up at 12 with the right mechanics, and then rather than need to tear them down at 17 and be like, okay, we need to rebuild this.
Yeah. No, it's at 17, that's a tough rebuild, right? You're talking about we need you in the cage 3 times a week at an hour and a half, just going through swing planes and whatnot. At 12, it could be a small little adjustment, go home and work on it, and then it's crazy. Next week, it's there. It's unbelievable.
Do you enjoy coaching enough that you can see maybe down the road pursuing it in professional baseball?
I don't know. I would never say never on anything. I wouldn't close any sort of door. I don't know if I would want to coach in professional baseball. I don't know, man. Like it's very hard. It's very hard to say because now you're back in the system. You're doing the
Yeah.
spring training again. You're waking up early. If I wanted to get back, if I wanted to get to the big leagues in a coaching realm, then maybe I might pursue that. Um, I don't know. I'm still playing right
Yeah.
now. So I would love to just explore where Travail leads. And if that leads to something in affiliated ball, then so be it, you know?
And if it keeps you from needing to get a part-time job in the summer even or in the winter, even better, right?
You
So
know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's
man.
perfect. And we've grown so much that it's just like, okay, we can start to see and start to understand, okay, we can make this an actual thing, an actual year-round thing where we
Mm-hmm.
who's ever here in the summer or home in the summer and wants to work with teams, they can do that. And if you don't have to do that because there's different platforms now where we can talk to the kids, whether it's apps or video analysis. We can be away and talk to them and go over what we did in the winter while they're on their team in the summer. So it's we're just going to keep plugging away at this thing and kind of see where it leads because we have a great bunch of kids. A lot of the parents that come through are awesome and very supportive. So um, it's been nice to have that consistent, you know, parents and kids coming through.
That's great, man. Congrats on that.
Yeah,
That's really
appreciate it.
cool. Best of luck with that. Do you know where you're playing this season?
We have no idea. I know that everything is kind of delayed till May
Yeah,
this year. Minor leagues are delayed till May. Mexico is only going to have a 66 game season. It's going
right.
to start in May. I think the Chicago Dogs are going to be in the same boat. There's no dates for the qualifier. There's no dates for the World Baseball Classic. It's
Yeah.
just straight limbo right now. So I'm just going to keep working out and running and just stay ready.
Where you land, you land.
It,
Well,
I,
my man,
yeah,
honestly, thank you so much. Like we really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us. It means a lot.
absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me on.